What's up, everybody? Charlie Marlowe here. You can see the Christmas stockings are hung with care, with hopes that St. Nicholas soon will be there. I think that's the rhyme or the song, something like that. Either way, I didn't come on here to sing about Christmas carols, even though it's a beautiful time of year. It's a fun time of year for the family, for the kids, Christmas, elf on a shelf, all that stuff. But still, I'm here to talk about baseball. On Hot Take Central, on 590 The Fan, great baseball discussion. We're talking 35-minute baseball talk coming up here with myself, Jimmy the Cat Hayes, Matt Whitener, Nate Lucas, Seth Close, and we begin the talk discussing the Cardinals shortstop, Tommy Edman. Jimmy the Cat Hayes, take it away.
So he's your shortstop, and I get why the Cardinals aren't in on the big names, because if you look at Tommy Edman's numbers, I mean, he's 7th in WAR in the National League, I think top 10 or top 15 in all of baseball. He's going to be good at shortstop. He's going to be, I think, numbers-wise, probably right there in the equation with some of the bigger names. And you'll, as Mo put it, you get a chance to see what you have with Gorman and Donovan at second base. Donovan, Gold Glover as a utility guy. We were saying off air, how did Tommy Edman not win that? I don't know the metrics they use for that. But the thing that intrigues me about Donovan is he sees a lot of pitches. He takes a lot of good at-bats. Even if he doesn't get a hit, his numbers are good. They're solid. He's a guy who can play anywhere. But I think he's worth a look at second if you're looking to infuse some power from the left side. Certainly we saw some of that from Gorman last year, who wasn't terrible playing a new position, second base. I thought he was fine. So I kind of agree with the Cardinals' approach to up the middle.
I'm not anti-Edman at all. I think he does all of the little things that when you hear about, you know, the things that help to glue a team together up the middle, you got to be strong. You got to be set up there if you're going to want to have a hope. He makes sure you're taken care of in a number of different places there. I think that the people that do say, hey, you know, there's opportunity out in the market isn't so much anti-Tommy Edman as it is you're still looking for more bat. You're still looking for the ability to be able to add more impact in the lineup like we talked through at length yesterday. So I think that you look at shortstop, and that's an opportunity. This is part of the reason why I was very pro Wilson Contreras, however, though, too, is that you got to have it. Catcher is I think it's the worst offensive position in baseball right now. I mean, there's maybe 5 guys that you would say maybe are real plus contributors there, and then that's it. And you've got one now. So you can maybe afford to let Tommy Edman be your shortstop there because he's going to do so many things right with the glove. And that's important, too, especially with the type of pitching staff that you've got. But it still does put more impact on saying that, A, you really got to hope that a lot of the guys you just named pan out, or they keep performing at the level that they're at, like Brendan Donovan, or you can find some offense in the outfield somewhere because you are sacrificing it a bit by not staying engaged in the shortstop market.
That's my concern, and I've said it from the beginning. Yes, I like all the options they have in the outfield, but if some of the ifs don't pan out, you're going to be short a bat if you want to really maximize what this team can be this year.
And that's my big thing. I think that right now, the way the team is constructed, I think it's solid. I think it's kind of roughly where we left off at last year in a way. But there's still so much if. And it seems like right now there's a lot of opportunity to at least reduce some of the if. I think you got to have a little bit of that, especially since you're trying to develop guys, and that's something the Cardinals are always going to be doing, is developing and giving opportunity. But there's so much if right now, and I don't feel so much better about the lineup that I'm like, all right, now they're ready to take that step forward and get into the elite part of the NL.
So let's talk about Contreras and what he is. I mean, I think he'll be better offensively because he'll be surrounded by better hitters. I think generally that translates into an uptick in numbers. However, I'll say it again, I'm not so sure that he's a middle-of-the-order guy in this lineup when you have righty bat, righty bat, righty bat. So I think we may need a lefty bat. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big believer in the upside for a guy like Carlson or what Gorman can be, but based on last year, you'd have to say there's still ifs. and I've said this before, strengthen, not lengthen.
Strengthen, not lengthen. Okay, first of all, I got some points to make on baseball, but I do want to mention, just because I did see this, and we'll talk about it later at length, but Mike Leach did pass away at the age of 61 following complications from a heart condition. So we'll talk about Mike Leach in a little bit, just because we had already started this Cardinals segment, but I wanted to pass that news along if you're listening to us here. So back to baseball.
That's brutal.
It's a tough segue, but I think sometimes we're looking at the Cardinals offense and we're not giving it enough credit from 2022. They were actually pretty darn good. And that's despite the fact that the catcher was a big minus position. You had a bunch of injuries and you had guys in the outfield that were either hurt or weren't coming through in some cases. You trade Harrison Bader and Dylan Carlson's banged up and Tyler O'Neill plays about 100 games or so. I mean, the Cardinals were, tied for third in the National League with the Mets in runs scored. So you're essentially, your top three, you're the top third in terms of offenses in the National League. And if you go by OPS, the Cardinals were third in the National League behind the Dodgers and the Braves, Mets right behind them, Phillies right behind them. So, look, you're not starting from a bad spot. No. You're starting from a pretty good spot. And here's another thing. I know he's coming on later and we love him, but when you look at the catching position the last couple years, look, Yachty turned himself into a really good big league hitter. He did. From where he started to his middle years where he was a really good offensive player. But his last 2 years, they were not pretty. And the last 2 years between Kisner and Yadier Molina together, the catching position overall was a big minus. And I think when you look at just from an OPS plus standpoint, the Cardinals literally by signing Wilson Contreras got about 50% better. They went from somewhere around 70% of league average to a dude who was 128, who was 30% above league average last year. I mean, that is a huge, huge upgrade.
And I think that is absolutely true, and I agree with that. And this is why I think that you still have to figure out a way to add another bat in so that you do take a step forward. Because right now, Wilson Contreras coming in, yes, it eliminates a hole that you had in your lineup behind the plate offensively, but it also basically in some ways kind of breaks even with what Albert was bringing into the lineup too at the end of the year. When you look at Contreras against Pujols, Contreras played 113 games last year. Albert played 109. For OPS plus, Contreras is at 128. Albert is at 154. Different situations, different contexts, but you're right there. Albert slugged about 90 points higher than he did, and home runs, Contreras had 22 against 24 for Albert. So while you do get better at a position where you got nothing from at all, as far as right now, if you broke camp, and luckily enough, you don't do that on December 13th, you would essentially kind of have the same bat in the lineup, and you would just be transferring potentially that lack of offense into another place where you had it before.
And I think the big point, though, is you took a position that is very hard to find offense. As you stated earlier, Matt, it's not easy in 2022 to find a plus offensive catcher.
No.
The Cardinals now have one who's basically top 5 offensively in all of baseball. So they went from literally around 30th, last place, to a guy who is now top 5 offensively in baseball. And then you look about replaceability. So it's hard to replace somebody like Wilson Contreras, and it's hard to get somebody who's that good offensively. It's not as hard to replace. I'm not saying, look, it's going to be easy to replace Albert Pujols. My point is more so, if you take the production from DH with Albert Pujols and you institute a timeshare of, let's just say right now, I'm just throwing it out there. Let's say it's a platoon between a Nolan Gorman and a Juan Yepez. I would have pretty strong confidence that that's going to be an above average position.
Above average, but
it might be 20% above.
If you look at what Albert did in the second half, I mean, he was, in my opinion, the best offensive performer in baseball, seemingly coming out of nowhere, right? I mean, I know the numbers, you can look and say, no, someone else was better. I mean, he carried them offensively in the second half. All his home runs seem to be meaningful. So you can look at numbers and say, well, this guy had more homers or whatever. I mean, he carried them offensively, and I'm not so sure that we have enough to offset that. That's why I wanted like a proven bat instead of a guy who could be. Look, I like Yepez an awful lot. Same with Gorman. But if you look at how this will all shake out, especially with a guy like Wynn coming, right, who's in the works, with Walker maybe this year being something, you're going to have a lot of pieces where you can't really fit them all in. All these guys that we talk about, what if you took an action now and took a couple of these pieces and got a legitimate guy who fit a need like a Reynolds, right? And then you take away some of the if, you would hope. Nothing's 100% certain. At the same time, clearing the path for some of these guys who will have an impact, or at least you're hoping for it.
So if you go around the diamond and you start, fair to say now, catcher, you have and we're talking just offense here. We're talking about the offense. Plus at catcher, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, you have the MVP of the league at first base. If we're starting Brendan Donovan, you have a guy who is top 3 rookie of the year in his first year above average offensively. Even if you say, look, Tommy Edman, really good player overall, shortstop, around league average offensively, a little bit above, but that's fair, don't you think?
A little extra pop from a middle infielder.
And again, we're talking about a position where it's really hard. Now, the last couple years, you had some really good offensive shortstops, don't get me wrong, but it's harder to find plus offense at shortstop than it is right field.
All right, I'm with you so far.
Okay, third base. We're going around the diamond. We have a dude who's an MVP candidate.
You have a Hall of Famer at third base.
Hall of Famer every year.
I think he led National League in WAR last year, too.
So that's what? Out of 5 positions, you have 4 pluses. And even Tommy Edman, he's above average offensively. Okay, now here's the wide open spaces. Outfield. I would be pretty confident that Lars Nootbaar is going to be above average offensively. And then it's health with everybody else. But it's a lot of guys that have a lot of talent.
Agreed. I'm just saying, that's my problem, is that I like all these guys. You go individually, player for player, name for name. Will this guy be something in Major League Baseball? Yes, 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 yes. But as Matt pointed out, they're ifs. And you also have a lot of guys entering the equation with a guy like Walker, right? With a guy like Burleson. Maybe you're never going to get a chance to see what he can be. With Wynn knocking on the door at some point soon, you're not going to have enough slots for all these guys. So I wonder if it makes sense to go ahead and package up some guys and get something, boom, takes care of outfield, for a bunch of years, and you're going to get what you really need in the mix to make it a better lineup is a lefty bat.
So that point about the outfield is one that I've been standing on top of the mountain screaming about for some time now, saying is that where's the constancy in the Cardinals outfield? So I just went back, I picked 5-year window, just arbitrary, because there's been a lot of hope about how the Cardinal outfield is going to work out over time, and quite honestly, it hasn't happened in a very long time. Looking at the mix of guys that you've got in the mix right now, between Tyler O'Neill, between Lars Nootbaar, between Dylan Carlson, and between I'm missing somebody significant here that we're thinking about everyday wise. I guess you can start to get into Jordan Walker. I wouldn't count him to be a part of that
too.
Burleson, all of the guys you got right now. Do you feel better about this group of if and upside compared to, let's say, 5 years ago when you had Tommy Pham, Dexter Fowler, Steven Piscotty, Randall Grichuk, young Harrison Bader in the mix?
Yes.
Do you feel better about this group right now?
Yes.
What's the selling point for this group versus that one?
First of all, Tyler O'Neill has done it. Mm-hmm. We've seen him have a monster year. The question is health, as you pointed out. I really like what we see in flashes from Dylan Carlson. I think he can be a legitimate major league outfielder that can play some defense. I think he'll add some pop. I feel pretty good about that. I just think they've done it at a level where some of these guys, like Dexter was Dexter. I think he got an unfair rap in St. Louis, but his numbers weren't terrible. He wasn't what I think the Cardinals thought they were getting. But they needed a guy, and he filled the bill.
I feel a little Dexter potential to go upside or downside with the Contreras signing. It's really, really eerily similar about the two situations that could come over. Not to step on that.
The difference is we had a catching position, as Charlie said, the last 2 years have been the bottom of baseball.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to go for up. When Dexter came in, they needed Dexter to be start off things, get us going, you're the guy.
Ego.
Exactly. And he never really was that guy. I always liked Dexter, and I do think he got a bad rap, But for the money they put in, and at that time he was one of the big ticket guys. Cardinals got him. I don't think he delivered on what the hope was.
Yeah.
Where Contreras, I mean, if he hits 20 homers, he's not going to hear any boos, right?
No, and I think that also Contreras plays a little bit better into the spirit of Cardinal baseball too. If you follow what I mean there, like he seems like a guy that's going to connect with the crowd here too. So I think that's going to play well for him as well.
And remember, Dexter was actually really good his first year.
Yeah.
His first year was really good. After that, he had one average season, and then he was banged up. So clearly that was not a good contract. But also, I talk a lot about positions because it's harder to find center fielder, shortstop, catcher. And I never understood what they did with Dexter because you paid that money for a center fielder.
And
then you
away
move
and right. Yeah.
And so you understand more the $80 million contract for a center fielder or for a catcher, positions that are tougher to replace. But then you move him. I just thought that didn't make sense from the get-go.
He wasn't. I mean, I don't think he was ever considered a great center fielder.
But still, it's the value you're bringing to that position. Like, there's a million dudes that fall off the turnip truck that can play right field and hit 20 bombs.
So my thing about it is that what we talk about is that the ease of being able to acquire it. And I think that catcher was absolutely an opportunity you had to take, whether it was Sean Murphy, whom we can touch on, that being resolved and him and landing in Atlanta, or Contreras. You knew that one way or the other, you had to do something there. But my thing about it also is that, it's easier to find an outfielder, but you got to go do it if you're going to do it. I mean, it can be easy. There can be a million of them out there, but if you don't make the move or make the commitment to go and do something about it, it doesn't matter how many of them are out there.
Hot take. We're having all these conversations about offense. My hot take is the Cardinals' offense is going to be really, really good again, and I'm not worried about it. And what I'm worried about is the same thing I was worried about last year, and that's even if they have a really good regular season. And that is you got a lot of solid number 2, number 3 type starters. And they're probably going to win the division, and they're probably going to win 90-plus games. And I still just don't know if that type of rotation is the type of rotation that can march you through a month of October and do damage. It's the same problem that they had last year. And it's why I think you need a Rodon type. I'm not saying they're going to go ahead and do that, but you need more aces. You need more guys like Flaherty if he can actually stay healthy. I don't think on paper when you match up the Cardinals rotation, which will be really good in the regular season, but I think once you try to win 15 games or whatever it is, 16 games in October, and you're matching up every night versus the Scherzers of the world and the Verlanders of the world and Wheeler and Nola, I just think it's hard to win those games when you're rolling out a lot of kind of pitch to contact, really solid pitchers, but guys who in the playoffs are probably going to give you 5 strong innings and strike out 4 to 5 batters, not 8 or 9 batters.
This is how I have always done this, and I think it still checks out when I want to look at the strength of a rotation. If you're talking, postseason wise, the Cardinals' number 1 pitcher, where does he pitch in the Mets rotation?
So if healthy, you're talking about, let's say Flaherty.
Yeah, let's say Flaherty. If not healthy, let's say we run Michaelis back the way he was last year, or Flaherty. Pick which one. Where do they slot into the Mets rotation?
I'd put them at 3 before. So obviously behind Scherzer and behind Verlander.
Mm-hmm. In front of Senga and Quintana.
In front of Quintana.
Okay.
Even though, hey, look, Quintana was the Cardinals' Game 1 starter.
Yeah. So
and pitch well.
So where does the Cardinals' best pitchers fit into the Phillies rotation?
I would say 3.
Dodgers
have so many injury issues, but similar.
Padres.
Similar.
We got a trend.
This is my point.
We got a trend going on here.
This is my point. Like, I'm not crapping on the Cardinals rotation because they have a lot of solid guys. But solid to me does not win you the World Series or get you to the World Series unless you're so good offensively and your bullpen is just freaking unbelievable.
If you're going to be playing in the new postseason world of Major League Baseball where you have to play that 3-game playoff, you have to have at least one guy who can split the difference in game one. You got to have someone that you can throw out there that's going to be able to do it. And, yeah, Jose Quintana did it for you last year. You can try to go about it that way and say that you'll add somebody along the way or try to make that impact. But I personally would feel a lot better for the way that the game is built right now, having two guys that I know I can lean on and get that done. And I think the Cardinals have got one if he's healthy and Flaherty. But adding one helps a lot.
To me, that's the big if. And, if Flaherty's healthy, I'm fine with him and Michaelis 1-2 for a playoff. You can say there's other rotations that are more glamorous or better, but if Flaherty's healthy, I'm fine with that. If not, I think we're going to look back on them not jumping on Quintana on a 2-year deal and say that was a big mistake.
Carlos Rodon, it was rumored, has got an offer on the table coming from the Yankees now to have decided to say, hey, we might as well jump back in on that one. I think the Giants have stayed involved in that. So, the market for him is hot. And rightfully so. He's got a lot of things working in his favor. One of the main things being age. He's got the ramp to keep going with it right there. But, again, we talked about it yesterday, and I think that it's worth noting is that trade season has barely gotten off the ground. You've had a couple of moves, Jesse Winker, Colton Wong. I think Sean Murphy getting dealt to the Braves yesterday as a part of that three-way that involved the Brewers and the A's as well is the big trade so far. But I think that January, February is really going to tell what happens on that side.
Let me pull a Cam. Nate, what do you think?
About the Cardinals rotation?
Anything baseball. Anything.
Anything baseball. I know before the show started, there was some talk about what the Braves gave up for Sean Murphy. And I still think that the Contreras move fits the Cardinals' needs pretty accurately. It lengthens the lineup. You're going to get a lot more pop out of the position than you've had over the last 2 seasons. Bernie Miklasz has done an extensive job reporting on the lack of offense at the Cardinals' position, whether that's using WAR, whether that's using OPS, whatever you want to use. It's been essentially nothing for the last 2 years.
The Cardinals were still using the pitcher last year, basically, even in the DH in play.
Yeah, and Contreras, I look at it, and I look at how the free agent market and what teams are spending. And I think the Cardinals finally ponied up and they said, look, we've got an issue that we need to resolve, and we're going to do it this way, and they did. There was an interesting tidbit, too. Kenny Rosenthal put out a piece in The Athletic about what the A's were seeking in return. And there are 2 varying sources that he uses. And in one, he says that the A's sought a return of Lars Nootbaar, Brendan Donovan, and a pitcher like Gordon Graceffo. And then the other report stated that they wanted Nootbaar or Donovan plus Graceffo. And so when you think about it, in hindsight, are those players that you were willing to part with? And according to the Cardinals and the sources used in this piece, the Cardinals were not willing to move from Nootbaar or Donovan. They wanted to have them draw from a pool more of the Alec Burleson, Juan Yepes, and Nolan Gorman. Or Carlson. Carlson's name was listed in that, too.
Mm-hmm. It's just amazing to me that if Nolan Gorman is considered to be less of an asset now than Lars Nootbaar. Because, if you just roll the clock back a year, just Gorman was off the charts. I just don't see it that way. When you look at Gorman's numbers, he's still, for the exposure he got and opportunity that he got, I'm not disappointed in what Nolan Gorman was last year.
You shouldn't be. And here's what's hilarious about it, because this is baseball. This is how we talk, media fans. But it is hilarious if you really think about the last year. What was the whole talking point the first part of the year when Nolan Gorman was hitting a home run every night, seemingly at Memphis? Why isn't he up here? Why isn't he up here? Why isn't Nolan Gorman up here? And then within 3 months, it's now, why aren't we trading Nolan Gorman? Why aren't we trading him? Think about that.
And they were like, where's Burleson? Why isn't he brought up? Yeah, I get that. I think with Nootbaar, though, there's more of a need in the outfield now. If you're talking about second base, I know the Cardinals feel pretty confident in Donovan. I think that's why one guy they don't want to part with, one guy they could. But it kind of speaks to my bigger issue. is that you have a bunch of guys who deserve a shot, who have, when given a shot, have been good. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be enough slots for them. And that's without Walker coming into the mix, who could have a monster spring, or who knows how far away Wynn is. And then you have more guys for the same amount of slots. At some point, maybe you deal some of that. I don't know.
It's a numbers game, and then sometimes I think you also have to look at and say, what are you okay with right now, and what do you hold for making a move in season as well? Because, I mean, there's going to be more to come. So what is your opportunity, and what are you going after there? I mean, when you just put Newbar and Gorman next to each other, the numbers are pretty, shocking outside of walks, and Newbar does a great job of getting on base and takes good at bats, and then is able to do that. His on base percentage is a lot higher.
That was an uptick in power for him while being a guy who takes walks, which is a unique combo.
My only thing for Newbar that I hope happens this year is that it's a bit more consistent, because a lot of what Newt did happened in spurts. And then you'd go through some valleys. It was peaks and valleys and all that. And if you're going to be an everyday guy, that's the difference between being a fourth and a top three guy. It's got to be there more frequently.
Newt was hitting 100 in June. And then the second half was a monster second half, except for 1 month where he just wasn't good, which speaks to the consistency you're looking for. Another thing that Newt brings, which I really like, he's a really aggressive defensive outfielder.
Yeah.
Overall, I'd say he's plus. I don't know what the metrics say. There are times it doesn't work out for him. He's also an energy guy, which I think is an intangible that you can't put a value on. I've seen it from the moment he walked into the clubhouse. So, yeah, I feel very comfortable with Newt as part of this ball club. I'm just saying there's a bunch of guys who have shown well who probably aren't going to get a look. Like with a guy like Burleson, who was a monster last year, who could be really good. Where are they going to put him to give him a look? And then when Walker's ready, whose minor league numbers, as good as all of them have been, may trump them all, that's a lot of pieces to try to fit in.
You got 39 home runs sitting there, and Moises Gomez that's right there. Listen, Burleson's a guy that I wouldn't look back in 5 years and be like, God, you should have done that, considering all the things that are still there.
Why not?
Because
we don't know.
You don't know, but I think at some point you got to be able to take some risk in some places that are there, and I think that what you've already got with Newbar and what you've got with Walker, if I'm looking at those three right there pitting them against each other, I mean, Burleson's just the odd man out for me right now.
Look, that's where we can talk about it all we want. The Cardinals need to know better than anybody who they need to deal, because you don't want it to be a Randy Arozarena situation where you never gave that dude a shot. Remember, they gave Randy Arozarena a very small, 20 games? And he was pretty good, but it was a super small sample size. Then, of course, Randy A. went and videotaped the old speech and all that. I still think there was a little something to that.
Yeah.
But my point is, Burleson was up. What did he get? Couple of bats. I mean, he got a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
he didn't do well.
48 at bats. I mean, you're not going to judge anybody off that, especially based off of what he did in the minors beforehand, where he was just ripping the cover off the ball. But I think, Kat, you made the point yesterday about you got to find ways to give people the time, and we're running into there's only so many at bats and so many games to do it. So you, at this point, you know what you need, and you know what you have to go after, and the Cardinals have enough needs that you can get some of this off, even if you don't check everything off the list, that you can at least try to make one more significant impact somewhere with all of the talent that they've stockpiled.
Let me get to the text line here. A bunch of baseball text coming in, 855-282-8255. Gino Ojic says Edman is a great second baseman and bottom of the order guy. He's an average shortstop where upgrades are available for the top or middle of the order. Let me tell you, he's actually an above average defensive shortstop. He was 9th in all of baseball in defensive runs saved, which is crazy that Donovan got that.
All positions.
All positions. Yeah. That's all positions. Switching his time between shortstop and second. Spartan44 says, there are way too many question marks with the starting rotation and only having Matz under contract after this season. They need a guy like Rodon and have plenty of money to do so. Babroni says, I don't want to lengthen it. I want to strengthen it.
Good for you.
An all-time Jimmy quote. Kyle says, Pujols and Dickerson carrying the Cardinals offense on their shoulders. Crazy times in the second half. It's a shame both were so crappy in the first half. It'll help this offense to just find some more consistency, which should come with health and the addition of Contreras. Kyle has a bunch of texts. So he says, guys, I feel better about this group, and I'm the guy that follows these kids in the minors. Think about it this way. Both O'Neill and Carlson had terrible seasons last year, and they were still both league average run producers. And O'Neill was 25% above league average after coming off the injured list in June. Kyle says, I got to read this one. Charlie nails it.
I saw it.
They still need pitching. Their group of middle to back end to minor league swing guys just aren't going to cut it. They're entering the season in the same spot as last season, and they needed 2 trades to bail them out at the deadline. That is the need. That and more left-handed relief options because Hennessis is spent, Packy is depth, and JoJo and Thompson should have a legitimate backup plan. And then I'll end on this. Guys, enough baseball for one show in December.
No.
Come on now.
This is the best part of baseball in the offseason right now, December.
People love this. When I look at the stuff Bally's posts, when it's Cardinals and it's decent, the views are 5 times what other sports get. And that's important. And I got no problem with talking baseball.
Well, blame Stan Kroenke that we're not talking about Baker Mayfield's comeback drive for the St. Louis Rams last week still.
And blame the Blues because even though they won last night, the wins aren't coming very often.
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Seth, are we talking too much baseball for your liking at this point?
It's never too much baseball to talk about. Talk about it as long as you guys would like.
Are you Christmas shopping? What are you doing over there?
These are soundboard drops.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
You're getting somebody some soundboard drops for
I
Christmas?
can scroll till tomorrow when I type in Joe Biden.
That's the gift that
There we
keeps
go.
giving.
All right, 2 more texts real quick, and then we'll wrap up the baseball conversation. Jack says, watch Palante and Thompson have monster years. You could see Palante in the rotation, potentially 2024. We'll see if they like him more as a long-term
They
bullpen
mentioned
piece.
him as depth in the rotation for this year. I think Thompson
absolutely should be.
is a possibility. I like him out of the bullpen an awful lot. His stuff is really, really good.
I think you've got more starters that were AA, AAA guys that will be ready to contribute in the major league level this year than you have in the past. Last year, but I don't think that negates the point about trying to add a major league arm to the rotation still. But when you look at Graceffo, when you look at Mike McGreevy, who's right there, when you look at some guys that can take off and rise up like a Tink Hintz or a Connor Thomas and all that, and you still have got I don't know how much you've got left in it. I'm not ready to pack them up and throw them out yet, but Liberatore is still there.
Dakota Hudson.
You got a lot of guys. Well, I'm talking about guys that haven't even, we know what Dakota's, year five he's going into, or 4? So you're going to see what you've got there. But I think they've got a lot of options
he
there.
came off an injury last year. There's sometimes that takes a little while. Maybe I'm a Dakota apologist. I'm not ready to put him on the,
I would like to say
the trash heap by any stretch.
You bought a little stock back in the day, and you're not going to sell it. I
I'm not
understand
selling
that, man. I'm not selling my Liberatore stock.
You sell high, you buy low.
That's
You know
right.
that. You know
That's
that.
right.
How about this take? Here's another, maybe it's not a hot take.
Take aim, baby.
When you start to mention all those names, the Cardinals have more starting, pitching, solid options than maybe any team in baseball, yet none of which you really want them to start a playoff game.
I want them to start a playoff game, just not the first one.
Is that fair?
I disagree. Like, I put Miles as a guy I want on the mound in a playoff situation. Again, a lot hinges on the health of Jack Flaherty. Do they need an ace? Yes. Could Miles be possibly sort of a 1A? Yes, maybe. But if Flaherty's healthy, he's an ace. And suddenly you have those two at the front of your rotation. You feel pretty good about it. But again, that's an if Jack is
We
healthy.
need 2 aces.
Lieutenant Governor, sir, I'd just like to speak on behalf of America for a moment. The St. Louis Cardinals right now are responsible for 40% of the Team USA rotation. Miles Michaelis is all in for America. He's going to be going to play in the World Baseball Classic. Adam Wainwright's there already. We've got to have one of the best rotations, not only in Major League Baseball, but in all of the world. Otherwise, why would they be pitching for America, some of our best offerings we've got?
So we better win that thing then.
We better take it home, baby, even without Bryce Harper.
We better beat Tommy Edman in South Korea. We better beat who's playing for Israel?
Newt's playing for Japan. Bader.
Wait, what?
Bader is playing for Israel.
Yes, that's what I was going for.
I think that's what you're. Listen, I'm as patriotic as anyone, and you can check my Twitter feed for that because I'm a patriot.
Sure.
But I still don't like pitchers pitching in the World Baseball.
I don't either.
I don't either.
I think that with a team with the luck that the Cardinals have had about rotation in the past, I don't love this.
It's in my view,
Bring
and
some
maybe
college guys
I'll
up.
make T-shirts. America first. except for the World Baseball Classic.
I like that.
We got to love it as much as the World Cup, though. This is our chance.
No, how about this?
This is our
we
chance to
don't.
take those Dutch out.
How about America first if you're a position player?
Okay, I'm with that.
I have no problem with Goldie and Arenado playing the World Baseball Classic. I just, if I'm shelling out, if you're Steve Cohen and you're shelling out all this money, or you're the Rangers, you're shelling out Jacob deGrom money, do you want him throwing live bullets
Do you think
against the Dominican Republic in a
No.
game that matters in March?
How do you think the call went? Let's call Max and see if he wants to pitch in the World Baseball Classic.
And here's the other thing about the World Baseball Classic. Because, you're playing for your country, there's more emotion. Like at that point in the spring, I don't really want high leverage situations for my arms. And you could say, well, they're gonna manage it carefully. Yeah, except if it's, a chance to play in the gold medal game. You're going to go more pitches.
Yeah.
To me, it's just a scary recipe.